Story 1. Do you thrive in a dynamic and fast-paced environment? We are consistently and intentionally understaffed. Story 2. We work hard and play hard here. Everyone is exhausted, and many are resorting to drugs to cope. Story 3. Work hard, play hard. We are like a family here. Any mention of mandatory fun activities, such as pizza on Fridays, is the kind of thing we enjoy. Story 4. We're a family. Expect you to give more than you get. You'll hit the ground running, little to no training. Jack of all trades, do the job of multiple people. Won't specify the salary. Expect to offer a lower salary compared to what was advertised. Has a problem with the term work-life balance. You'll live to work, not the other way around. Story 5. I was interviewed at a location where the manager spent 20 minutes criticizing the individual who left my potential position. Story 6. If they say to be results-driven and ready to hit the ground running, it means you will be working overtime with little to no training, and you're expected to deliver. Another situation is if they give you a document to sign stating you agree to work beyond your allocated contract hours for business needs with no extra pay. Story 7. We don't have set working hours. We work until all the work is done. If you work faster, you can go home earlier. However, in practice, you never get to go home early. Story 8. When security cameras are present everywhere, especially in a company that does not require a high level of security, it indicates that employees are being monitored closely. I learned this lesson the hard way. Story 9. I asked them what the average expected overtime hours per month were, but they were not keen to answer. Instead, they asked me why I needed to know that. Story 10. If you look around and cannot find any elderly individuals, it is because no one stays in this job long enough to grow old. Story 11. There is a 24/7 on-call rotation. In information technology, that is not a red flag. On-call duties are fairly common. However, they can vary from dealing with the occasional legitimate emergency to effectively working around the clock. The red flag is that the interviewers evaded every question regarding their on-call processes and workload, which suggests it was the "you are working 24/7" variety. Story 12. Work hard, play hard. We have intense working hours, but we stay late every Wednesday for pizza and tambola, with a chance to win a Starbucks gift card. Story 13. I have walked into a few places that seemed miserable. Offices that were dead quiet with nobody talking, just people staring at computer screens. There was no personality at all. Story 14. Family-run business translates to a great boss who is a dad that retired and handed the business to an incompetent son. Story 15. My biggest concern arose when they couldn't provide a clear answer about work-life balance. They kept saying things like, "We're like a family here," and "sometimes we need to put in extra effort," which translated to guilt-tripping employees into working weekends without pay. Story 16. If they say things like, "We're a family," or emphasize their work-life balance, it's a huge red flag. "We're a family" translates to treating you poorly, asking you to do things that don't make sense, and overworking you. You wouldn't dare speak up against the family, would you? It's simply used to guilt-trip people into compliance. If they mention work-life balance, it likely means there isn't one. This reinforces the first point. Story 17. I saw a job that mentioned the company followed the Mamba mentality, and employees often reported working over 60 hours a week due to their dedication. I need a job, but if they are pressuring me to work overtime already while I am just applying, I can only imagine how demanding it would be when actually working there. Story 18. We are like family. However, we will treat you poorly. Multitasking is required because we are understaffed, and you will be overworked. The turnover rate is high due to the difficult management. Story 19. Not so subtle, but if they are late to the interview or act in any other way that would disqualify the applicant. If they cannot hold themselves to a high standard, you do not want to work there. Story 20. You give the worst interview you have ever given while applying for a job that should be very selective about whom they hire, and they call you back in less than an hour offering you the job. Story 21. This is the staff room. We have a fridge with plenty of catering leftovers, but people usually eat at their desks. Story 22. They are offering a sign-on bonus. The larger the bonus, the greater the warning signal. Companies do not pay more than necessary, especially for entry-level positions. So if you are a recent graduate or seeking an entry-level job, and they are offering a $10,000 sign-on bonus, you should be cautious. Story 23. At a previous job, one of the interviewers asked me how I handle conflict with coworkers. I was still a bit young in my career, so I gave an answer about pulling the person aside and calmly expressing my feelings while trying to resolve the issue. Little did I know that the workplace that hired me was filled with constant yelling and fighting among coworkers. It was definitely one of the most toxic work environments I have ever experienced. Story 24. Open plan office equipment. If you have ever seen the show Severance, refers to those open plan desks with short walls and small lockable filing cabinets. Any form of zealotry such as test-driven development, Scrum, or Agile are tools to get work done, not doctrines. If your interviewer is preaching about how much the workplace adheres to a particular development practice, they may be pretending to be a functional company or are staffed by ideological zealots. Story 25. I had a clause in a contract that stated if I quit before a year, there would be a $500 penalty. This is illegal, but they worded it in a way that avoided direct language. I lasted 7 months, and they took $500 off my last paycheck. I can understand why they had such high turnover. Story 26. Bragging about turnover rate as if it's a positive aspect that employees leave quickly. Instructing new hires to report any discussions about unions to their supervisor. It was Target. Story 27. LinkedIn randomly shows me ads for jobs, and a recent one stated, "Hit the ground running," meaning you will receive no training or guidance but will be expected to deliver. This is concerning in a company that has been around for over a decade and openly admits it doesn't have a marketing plan. Story 28. Not wanting to discuss salary and benefits. We are attempting to entice you while offering the minimum compensation possible. Story 29. If the interviewer avoids questions about work-life balance or team turnover, it's a warning sign. It suggests they may be concealing a challenging environment that can take a toll on your well-being. Pay attention to their demeanor as well. Forced smiles or brief answers indicate a workplace where individuals are merely surviving rather than thriving. Story 30. Once you work here for 2 years and have this on your resume, you can go anywhere. I didn't hear it at the interview, but I heard it from the CEO shortly after starting. Story 31. I had an interview at a company with 2 senior team members. We went through the entire process, and they asked if I had any questions. I said I had just one. Do you like working here? Is this a good company to work for? The silence was deafening. They both awkwardly paused for a moment. Their responses were long and vague. It's good to have a challenge. Everybody likes different things. It's important to think about your career, and so on. Too many words and not enough substance. Neither of them said yes. I decided to pass on that job. Story 32. The boss emphasizes that he is a straightforward person. This slang originated in the first half of the 20th century, where it meant honest. However, its current implication is that you are expendable, and he will communicate that to you directly. Story 33. Some job postings don't include a list of perks, such as job descriptions, requirements, and that's it. There is no information about salary or insurance. Even McDonald's provides a list of these. Story 34. One statement that stood out to me was, "We are growing so fast it's hard to keep track of who takes care of what." As a project manager, this reads as, "We are so disorganized that accountability is impossible." The company disbanded the team within a week of my second interview. Story 35. The more vague and self-centered individuals are in describing their jobs and organizations, the worse it is. Look for passive-aggressive remarks when inquiring about adjacent teams and management. If everyone is unable to clearly explain how the business operates, it likely does not operate effectively. I would argue that most workplaces exhibit a fair amount of these warning signs. Story 36. When they ask during the interview, "We know this is a part-time job at the bottom of the pay scale, but will you be keeping your other job too?" I respond, "Yes, what you offer does not cover my rent. Additionally, Why publish a pay scale when that is not actually what you are paying? Story 37. They said, "This is a startup, and we expect you to put in 50 to 60 hours a week. Is that okay with you?" "No, not at all, especially if you are going to pay me less." Story 38. I had an interview once and was asked, "I see your hours of availability here. How flexible are you with that?" "We are a team." Then I left. Story 39. If the organization has been around for a while, yet the majority of people who work there are recent hires, high turnover is a significant concern. Story 40. Faith-based, values-based, family-focused, upholding traditional values. You are about to work for the most racist, sexist, homophobic, hypocritical conservative religious group you could ever imagine. Story 41. Turnover issues, whether organization-wide or department-specific, should be addressed. Check the tenure of the interviewers and their colleagues on LinkedIn before the interview. Story 42. If the lobby has one of those tenure signs showing how long employees have worked there, beware if it is lopsided towards the longer tenure. I worked at a place that had more than 20 employees with over 20 years of service than those with 5 and 10 combined. It was totally dysfunctional, and no one in authority was interested in making improvements. Story 43. This is a potential red flag. On-the-job training indicates a lack of standard operating procedures or formal training. I am accustomed to navigating unfamiliar situations and figuring things out independently, but this approach may not suit everyone. Many detail-oriented individuals would struggle without clear instructions or a checklist to follow. This is marked as a potential concern because many jobs require on-the-job training to earn qualifications and certifications. It's a standard practice when starting out. However, I have encountered workplaces that abandon employees to face challenges alone, and if they do not succeed, they are let go. Story 44. This is for engineering. When you ask them a technical question, such as, "What do you actually work on?" and they talk about unrelated bureaucracy instead of the product. Story 45. When one person has been at the job site for 18 years and is not a supervisor, while all the team leads have been there for 6 years or less. Story 46. When they criticize you for something you don't know how to do, even though you know it is not something you would need to do anyway. Story 47. Everything is systematic and organized, and the people working there seem more like robots than human beings. Instead of normal social interactions, you receive insincere smiles and corporate jargon comments. Story 48. You will have to take on many responsibilities here. So are you good at multitasking? This means you will be doing a lot in your role. For example, you may be hired to work the register, but you might also end up cooking, cleaning, handling finances, and taking on any tasks that others do not want to do. Story 49. What is the divorce rate for the position I'm filling? I was offered the job after a 5 to 10-minute interview. Their advertisement stated 90% home, 10% travel. But when I inquired about it, they said, "Oh, it's a typo and the reverse is true." I dislike traveling for work and expressed to the interviewer that it must be challenging for marriages. He agreed and mentioned that both of their previous employees got divorced. I declined the offer. My marriage means more than any job or income. Story 50. In nursing, anything with a bonus and a commitment for longer than 6 months is not advisable. I say this as my 2-year contract comes to an end never again. Travel pay and a 3-month contract is the maximum. Story 51. I asked one of the interviewers if the position was newly created. The interviewer became defensive and questioned why I needed that information. I like to know if I am replacing someone who was promoted or if the new position is due to an increase in workload. It was clear that someone had left, but they did not want to disclose that. I mentioned my expected salary to one interviewer, and he essentially pushed me out the door. That night, I received a rejection letter. The job description encompassed the responsibilities of 3 people, but was advertised for $20,000 less than my current salary. The general negative comments about former employees were a red flag and, not to mention, unprofessional. Story 52. This might not be subtle, but being turned down for the position you interviewed for or being told it is no longer available, only to be offered a completely different position, is frustrating. This has happened to me and another person I know, and both times the company lacked respect for its workers. Story 53. We are family. Unpaid overtime is mandatory. You will always be on call. Here is a check for $20,000. Please return your computer and office furniture and send us the balance. Paid time off is a pool of time available to all employees. Use as much as you need until it runs out. All non-disclosure agreements apply. Your schedule is flexible and may be changed at any time without notice. Story 54. We're a family here. That often means overwork and underpayment. If they can't clearly explain what the role entails or frequently change the subject, it may indicate that they do not know what they want. This is not a positive sign. Story 55. When they say, we're like a family here, it feels more like a dysfunctional family that expects unpaid overtime and never lets you leave. Story 56. I asked my interviewer, an important person at a local restaurant and food delivery chain, what the company had done to support her growth. Instead, she talked about a time she had to come in late at night on short notice to photograph food. She quit 3 months after I started. I was there for a bit less than a year. It was the early days of the ongoing pandemic, and I needed the remote work. Story 57. I rejected a job that had made me an offer and was taking me on a tour. Every person I met expressed their need for assistance. I was leaving a job where I was overwhelmed with work and was not about to accept another one like that. Story 58. The interviewer had a red, puffy face and appeared unhealthy. They seemed to have no time for the interview, even though I had flown in. They wanted me to start immediately without asking any questions. I left and never looked back. Story 59. Recently, there has been a lot of boasting about doing everything in-house and relying on tools developed and maintained within the organization. Yet, almost an hour was spent complaining about numerous issues, delays, and challenges that could possibly occur. One might think it would make sense if they were hiring for a position needed to improve the situation or work within that division. However, the position was in a department adjacent to the one facing the issues, and it had no impact on resolving any of those problems. It was simply a twisted notification stating that the individual would be required to develop performance improvement plans and additional training for the same department that could not even take a lunch break in peace because everything was constantly in crisis. What was proposed would not change the ongoing state of emergency at all. Story 60. Flexible schedule, on call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and willing to drive over 100% of the time. I have seen too many job postings on LinkedIn with those inadequate descriptions for pay that is far below inflation. Story 61. The first thing you should do when arriving for an interview is to use the restroom before letting them know you have arrived. Go into one of the stalls and check the toilet paper. If it is single ply, leave. If they do not care about your comfort, they do not care about you. Story 62. The university in my town where I used to work has a maverick as a mascot, and the administration refers to themselves as a Mavely. It is a toxic ecosystem. Story 63. There was a person here that I didn't like, and I made things difficult for him, so he eventually quit. That was a significant warning sign for me. Story 64. Look at the parking lot when you go for an interview. Are the employees driving mid-range, newer cars? If the workers are driving old vehicles while management or the owner is driving luxury cars, that is a negative sign. Story 65. The place offers guaranteed income, such as government support, and the office has low salaries along with a very low staff turnover. You are dealing with individuals who recognize they would struggle to find a job elsewhere, so they stay quiet and try to avoid attention. Initially, it may seem appealing to relax and avoid performance improvement plans, but soon you realize that working with these individuals is frustrating. Progress is non-existent, and bureaucracy is overwhelming. You gradually become stagnant. When you are eventually pushed back into the job market, you will have little to show on your resume. Story 66. You have to use a parking garage 2 blocks away and walk to the interview. There is a metal detector, and your interviewer seems stressed, checking his phone every 20 seconds and not making eye contact with you. Instead, he looks at your resume as if it's the first time he has seen it. Story 67. Observe the people who are working there and see how they act. Are they friendly, funny, and open? Or do they look sad, quiet, and bored? Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.